The first time my sister cried at my wedding shower, everybody in the room thought it meant love. I did too. For maybe 3 seconds, I let myself believe I was standing inside one of those soft family moments people remember forever. The kind with ribbon curls all over the coffee table and women laughing too loud in the kitchen and somebody's perfume mixing with the smell of vanilla cake and coffee. The kind where older relatives say things like, "This is what life is supposed to look like." My mother's living room was full by noon. There were pale pink flowers in grocery store vases, tissue paper spilling out of gift bags, and a long folding table pushed against the wall with chicken salad, sandwiches, fruit, and little frosted cookies, shaped like wedding dresses. My Aunt Rachel had brought her deviled eggs in the same glass dish she used for every holiday, and my best friend Lily was sitting on the floor by the fireplace curling ribbons around her fingers like she had all the time in the world. I stood near the armchair everybody wanted me to sit in, smiling so much my cheeks already hurt. I was 25, legally married already on paper because Ethan's insurance kicked in faster that way, but the real wedding was still ahead of us. The church, the dress, the vows in front of everybody, the full beginning. This shower was supposed to be part of that, proof that my life had become something solid and visible, something nobody could take away or question or reduce to maybe next year. I wanted that more than I liked admitting. Growing up, Chloe had always been the kind of person people noticed first. She walked into rooms like she had music behind her. I was the one who remembered birthdays, brought extra tape, cleaned up after parties, called our grandmother back when everybody else forgot. Chloe got admired. I got trusted. There are worse roles in a family, but if you live inside one long enough, you start treating it like your shape. Still, when I saw her that afternoon, in a green dress with her hair clipped back softly, carrying a bottle of sparkling lemonade and smiling at me like she really was happy, something inside me loosened. I thought maybe this time would be easy. Maybe this time I wouldn't have to interpret her. Ethan came in 10 minutes later with extra ice and a sheepish grin because he'd forgotten the little plastic cups my mother asked for. My mother scolded him lightly. Everybody laughed. He kissed my temple on the way past me and squeezed my shoulder in that calm public way of his that usually made me feel steadier. For a while it was good. Really good. Women I had known since middle school told me marriage advice I didn't ask for. Somebody joked that Ethan had better learn how to load a dishwasher correctly. My mother cried once already over the guest towels Aunt Denise had embroidered. Even I laughed at that. Then Chloe stood up to do a toast. She lifted her glass with one hand and pressed the other to her chest like she was trying to keep something inside. At first, her voice sounded normal. Warm. A little dramatic, the way Chloe always was when people were watching. She said Ava has always been the kind of person who gives more than she gets. That got a soft murmur from the room. My mother smiled like she approved of the line. Then Chloe looked at me and something in her face changed. Not completely. Not enough that anyone else would have called it strange. But the smile didn't hold. Her eyes filled too fast. Her mouth trembled in a way that didn't match the words she was saying. "You deserve to be happy," she said. And then she had to stop. The room went tender around her immediately. My mother whispered, "Oh, honey." Somebody set down a fork. Aunt Rachel reached for a tissue box. It all happened in that familiar female way, that ritual of making emotion into something warm and beautiful the second it appears. Chloe laughed once through tears and said, "I'm sorry. I don't know. Seeing you finally with a good man, it's a lot." Everybody melted. Everybody except me, because I was looking at Ethan. He had gone still. Not touched. Not bashful, not the way a man looks when his wife's sister says something sweet about him in front of a room full of women. He looked braced. That was the word that came to me later, braced, like he was waiting to see whether she was about to say too much. I felt something cold move under my ribs, just for a second. Then Chloe wiped under her eyes, smiled again, and finished the toast. People clapped. My mother teared up. Someone told Chloe she had such a beautiful heart. She sat down beside Lily and took the tissue Aunt Rachel handed her, and the room moved on. I tried to move on with it. I opened gifts, glass bowls, a white serving platter, a cookbook with handwritten notes in the margins from my mother, towels tied with satin ribbon, a card from Aunt Rachel with cash folded inside and the words, "Choose kindness but not at your own expense," written in her slanted blue handwriting. That line stayed with me for reasons I couldn't explain. The shower kept going, but I stopped feeling fully inside it. I started watching. Chloe kept smiling, but she never held my eyes for long. Ethan was attentive in a way that almost looked normal, except there was something overdone about it. He offered to carry plates to the kitchen, refilled drinks nobody had asked him to refill, kept touching the back of my chair lightly, as if he wanted the room to register what a good husband he was. Once, while I was unwrapping a box of wine glasses, I looked up and caught Lily looking at me, not smiling, studying. She glanced toward Chloe, then back at me just for a second. It was such a small look that I might have imagined it, but it made me more aware of my own hands. A little later, Aunt Rachel was standing near the dining room archway talking to my mother about how weddings bring old patterns right up to the surface, and my mother cut in so fast it almost made me flinch. "Well, not today," she said with a bright laugh. "Today is about Ava." Aunt Rachel went quiet in that deliberate way older women do when they know exactly what was just shut down. Nothing happened. That was the strangest part. Nothing happened, and yet by the time the last guest was leaving, I felt like I'd spent 2 hours standing in sunlight that was a little too strong. Afterward, the house emptied all at once. The ribbon scraps looked sad on the carpet. My mother was in the kitchen wrapping leftover cookies in foil. Lily had left after hugging me a little longer than usual. Aunt Rachel kissed my cheek and told me to call her if I needed anything, and there was something in the way she said it that almost made me ask need what instead. I carried gift bags out to Ethan's car. The late afternoon air felt colder than it should have for spring. I had both arms full of tissue paper and boxes, and I was halfway down the front walk when I realized I'd forgotten one of the cards on the entry table. I turned back before anyone noticed. That was when I heard Chloe's voice from the side hallway near the coat closet. Low, tight. "I couldn't do it," she said. Then Ethan even lower. "Not here." I stopped. It wasn't what they said. Not exactly, it was the tone. The fact that neither of them sounded confused. They sounded like two people in the middle of something that had started before I arrived. There was a pause after that. Not an awkward pause, not empty. A full one, shared. By the time I stepped into view, Chloe had her purse over her shoulder and Ethan was looking down at his phone like nothing at all had happened. Chloe smiled at me too quickly. "I was just saying bye," she said. I nodded like I believed her. In the car, Ethan talked about how well everything had gone, how happy my mom looked, how generous everybody had been. I answered when I needed to. I even leaned my head back and closed my eyes for a minute, pretending I was just tired. But that sentence stayed in me. I couldn't do it. That night, after we brought the gifts upstairs and stacked them by the dining table in our apartment, I stood in the bathroom taking out bobby pins while Ethan brushed his teeth. I tried to say it lightly. "Chloe got really emotional today." He spit, rinsed, and wiped his mouth. "Yeah. Weddings do that to people." He didn't look at me when he said it. I watched him in the mirror. It felt like more than that. Finally, he met my eyes and his face arranged itself into calm so quickly it made my stomach tighten. "Ava," he said, almost smiling, "it was your shower. She cried because she loves you. Don't make it weird. Don't make it weird." I looked down at the pink bobby pin in my hand and felt embarrassed so fast it almost covered everything else. Maybe he was right. Maybe I was overtired. Maybe I had let one strange moment and one half-heard sentence turn ugly in my head because happiness made me nervous and I didn't know what to do with a room full of people looking at me like I was finally chosen. But when I got into bed that night, sleep wouldn't come. I lay beside my husband in the dark and replayed Chloe's face over and over. The trembling mouth, the wet eyes, the way Ethan had gone still. And somewhere after midnight, with the apartment quiet and my heart beating too hard for no reason I could prove, the thought came to me so clearly it felt less like an idea than a bruise I'd just pressed by accident. Chloe hadn't cried like a sister watching me begin. She had cried like someone losing something. She had cried like someone losing something. I carried that thought around for 2 days like it was something hot wrapped in cloth. I kept shifting it from one hand to the other, hoping it would cool if I stopped looking at it directly. It didn't. On Monday after work, I sat in Lily's car outside the clinic because I didn't trust myself to go straight home and act normal. The parking lot was full of the usual end-of-day mess: brake lights, grocery bags, a woman dragging a tired toddler toward a minivan. But inside Lily's little Honda, it felt sealed off like a place where I could say something ugly without it becoming real too fast. She handed me an iced coffee she'd already bought me and said, "Okay, start from the beginning." So I did. I told her about Chloe's toast, the way her voice broke, the way Ethan went still, the thing I heard by the coat closet, and how ridiculous I felt even repeating it out loud. When I got to the part about asking Ethan in the bathroom, I heard myself imitate his tone, soft, patient, almost amused, and suddenly I hated it. Lily listened without interrupting. She kept one hand on the steering wheel and looked straight ahead, like she was giving me room to say it without being watched too hard. When I finished, she was quiet for a second. Then she said, if something felt wrong in your own life, don't insult yourself by pretending you didn't feel it. I stared down at the sweating cup in my hands. That doesn't mean it's what you're afraid it is, she added. But you're not crazy. The word landed harder than I expected. Crazy. I hadn't said it, but it had already been living in me. I swallowed. Have you ever noticed anything with them? Lily hesitated just long enough to hurt. Not enough that I would ever have come to you with it, she said. But maybe a little too comfortable sometimes. Chloe teasing him in that way she does. Him laughing too much. I told myself it was just family closeness. Family closeness, there are phrases people use when they don't want to pull the thread. That night I lay awake thinking about old versions of Chloe and me. Not dramatic movie sister versions. Real ones. Chloe at 16 flirting with my friend's boyfriend just to prove she could. Chloe at 21 furious when our cousin got engaged first even though she swore she didn't care. Chloe walking into rooms and somehow making every celebration bend toward her without ever asking directly, and me always being told she was just more emotional than I was, more sensitive, more impulsive. That I was the easy one, the steady one, the one who understood. Being the easy one sounds like praise until you realize it mostly means people expect you to bleed quietly. On Wednesday, I stopped by my mother's house after work because she had forgotten to send me home with one of the recipe cards from the shower. She found it in the kitchen drawer under a stack of thank you note envelopes and handed it to me with a distracted smile. She was already talking about centerpieces for the church reception when Aunt Rachel walked in through the back door carrying tomatoes from her garden in an old produce bag. She kissed my cheek and said, "You look tired." "I'm fine," I said automatically. Aunt Rachel looked at me for one beat too long. Then she set the tomatoes on the counter and said almost to herself, "Your sister never did like it when life moved on without asking her first." My mother turned from the sink so sharply the faucet kept running. "Rachel." What Aunt Rachel said, not even sounding defensive. I didn't say anything untrue. My mother shut off the water and gave me the tight smile she uses when she wants a room to behave. You know how your aunt likes to dramatize people? I should have let it pass. Usually I would have, but something in me had gotten tired of letting women rename reality right in front of me. What did she mean, I asked. Neither of them answered right away. That silence told me more than words would have. Finally, my mother picked up a dish towel and started drying a perfectly clean plate. Nothing that matters now. That phrase stayed with me the whole drive home. Nothing that matters now. When I opened the apartment door, Ethan was in the kitchen making pasta. He leaned over and kissed my forehead and asked if I wanted red sauce or pesto, and for one dizzy second I saw exactly how someone could choose denial forever. Domestic life has a way of making you feel stupid for suspecting it. A simmering pot on the stove. A familiar pair of shoes by the couch. Your husband asking whether you want parmesan. Then his phone lit up on the counter. He reached for it too fast. Not fast enough. I didn't see the whole thing. Just a preview banner before he flipped the screen down. Can't stop thinking about no name, no full message, just those 4 words and the quick, guilty movement of his hand. My whole body went cold so suddenly I had to grip the edge of the counter. Ethan looked up. Who was that? He didn't blink. Work. Work says can't stop thinking about. He gave a short breath that was almost a laugh, almost annoyance. Ava. Seriously, it was Ryan. About the game Sunday. He said it too cleanly. Too ready. I nodded once like I accepted it and he relaxed a little too soon. Later in bed he fell asleep with one arm over his eyes. I lay beside him, awake staring at the dark outline of the ceiling fan and feeling something inside me reorganize around the possibility that my life was not what I thought it was. The next afternoon I texted Chloe and asked if she wanted coffee. She answered right away with 3 heart emojis and a sure babe, which almost made me throw my phone across the room. We met at a place in German Village where she liked the patio because people could see her. She showed up in sunglasses and a cream sweater even though it was too warm for one and hugged me like nothing in the world had shifted. For the first few minutes she talked about floral arrangements and bridal makeup and whether I'd thought more about changing the seating chart. I let her. I watched her stir her latte and touch her necklace and smile at the barista when he passed by. Then I said as casually as I could, "You left pretty fast after the shower." Her spoon clicked against the cup. "I had an early morning." "You seemed upset." She gave a little laugh and looked down. "Oh my God, Ava, I cried at your wedding shower. I wasn't having a breakdown." "I didn't say you were." She lifted her eyes to mine then, and there it was again, that strange mix of softness and caution, like she was approaching something fragile she didn't trust. "You've been under a lot of pressure," she said. "Maybe you're reading too much into things because it's all getting so real." The words were gentle. The meaning underneath them wasn't. It's not us, it's you. I leaned back in my chair. What things? Now she got emotional too fast. I saw it happen. Her face changed almost on cue, hurt pouring in before I had actually accused her of anything. You know I love you, she said quietly. I hate that you'd even look at me like that. Like what? Like I was finally looking at her without the family script. My phone buzzed in my purse before I could answer. My mother. When I stepped outside to take it, her voice was already tense. What are you doing with Chloe? Having coffee? About what? I stared through the patio railing at the street. Why does it sound like you already know? A beat of silence. Then Ava, not every feeling needs to become a problem. Something in me hardened. Did you know something was off? No, she said too quickly. I just know this family and I know how easy it is for people to say things they can't take back. When I went back inside, Chloe was dabbing under one eye with a napkin. I sat down and suddenly felt tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. That evening, Ethan told me he had to run out for an hour because his brother needed help moving a couch. He said it while nodding his sneakers and checking his watch, not looking at me for very long. Which brother? I asked. He frowned. Micah. That's weird. I thought Micah was in Cleveland until tomorrow. He froze just a little. He came back early. Then he smiled like I was being cute for noticing details. After he left, I stood in the living room feeling humiliated by how obvious everything suddenly seemed and how badly I still wanted an innocent explanation. I called Lily and told her about the text preview, the coffee with Chloe, my mother's voice on the phone. She was quiet for a second. Then she said, Ava, I need to tell you something and I didn't before because I didn't have anything solid. My throat tightened. What? The week you worked those late shifts before the shower, I drove past your building one night after dinner with Mateo. Chloe's car was outside. I shut my eyes. She might have been dropping something off, Lily said quickly. I told myself that at the time. But she was still there when we came back through almost an hour later. The room tilted. I sat down hard on the arm of the couch. Why didn't you tell me? Because I had nothing. And because I know what it means to put something like that into someone's marriage if you're wrong. I couldn't even blame her. That was the worst part. Everybody had been trying not to be the person who broke the world open. So I had been left standing inside it alone. When Ethan got home, he went straight into the shower. I didn't plan anything. I wasn't suddenly transformed into some sleek, suspicious wife from a TV show. I was just a woman with a pulse in her throat and a husband whose phone was face up on the coffee table for the first time in days. It buzzed once, a message banner slid across the screen before I could stop myself from seeing it. I'm sorry about today. Watching her open gifts for a life that should have been the rest cut off. But I didn't need the rest. My hand started shaking so badly I had to grip the edge of the table to steady it. At the top of the message thread was Chloe's name. And just like that, the whole shower changed shape. The tears. The toast. Ethan's stillness. My mother's tight voice. Chloe telling me I was overwhelmed. Lily seeing her car outside my apartment. All of it snapped together with such sickening force that for 1 second I couldn't breathe. In the bathroom, the shower water kept running. I stared at Chloe's name glowing on my husband's phone and understood with devastating clarity that I was no longer trying to figure out whether something was wrong. I was deciding what to do with the truth. I don't remember crossing the room. 1 second I was standing by the coffee table with Ethan's phone glowing in my hand, and the next I was in the bedroom with the door shut, sitting on the floor beside the bed like my legs had stopped belonging to me. I read the message again. I'm sorry about today. Watching her open gifts for a life that should have been, that was all I got because the rest was hidden unless I unlocked the phone, and I didn't need the rest. There are moments when the body understands before the mind can organize language around it. Mine did. My hands went cold, then hot, then numb. I pressed my fist against my mouth because I could hear the shower still running, and I refused to let the first sound Ethan heard from me be a broken one. For maybe 2 minutes I just sat there and let it hit me. The gifts, the tissue paper, the stupid little frosted cookies, Chloe crying with mascara at the corners of her eyes while older women smiled like they were witnessing love. Ethan standing there with that careful braced stillness. My mother cutting off Aunt Rachel. Lily's face across the room. All of it rearranged itself into something uglier and more honest. It wasn't just that they had betrayed me. They had let me perform happiness in front of people who loved me while they stood inside a secret together. That was the thing that finally made me cry. Not loudly. Not theatrically. I put my forehead against the side of the bed and cried the way people do when something inside them gives way in private. No audience. No beauty in it. just grief and humiliation and the awful flattening realization that the two people closest to me had watched me build a future on top of rot. Then the crying stopped. Not because I felt better, because something colder took its place. I wiped my face, stood up, and set Ethan's phone back exactly where I had found it. When he came out of the shower in a t-shirt and sweatpants toweling his hair, I was sitting at the kitchen table with my own phone in front of me. He smiled automatically. "You okay?" "No," I said. "Call Chloe. Tell her to come here." He stopped drying his hair. "What now?" Something in my face must have told him the room had changed shape because he didn't try to laugh it off. He just stared at me. "Ava." I saw the message. The towel slipped from his hand. For a second he did nothing. Then he sat down across from me slowly, like I might startle. "It's not what you think." I actually closed my eyes for a moment, not from pain, but because the sentence was so small compared to what they had done. "Call her." He tried once more. "Can we please just talk first?" "No. You've had enough private conversations." He picked up his phone with hands that were suddenly less steady than mine. When Chloe answered, he walked 2 steps toward the window before I said, "Put it on speaker." He did. Her voice came through bright and easy at first. "Hey," Ethan swallowed. "Can you come over a beat?" "Well, why?" "Because Ava knows." Silence. Then softly, "I'll be there in 20. He ended the call and looked at me like there might still be a version of the night where this could be managed. I texted my mother next. "Come over. Now. Don't ask why." Then I texted Lily, "It's true. Please come." I didn't plan that part. I just knew I was done being alone inside other people's damage. Chloe arrived first. No sunglasses now. No bright social face. Just a gray cardigan thrown over leggings, hair pulled back, mouth already trembling. She looked at me once and started crying before she had even fully stepped into the apartment. I almost laughed at the cruelty of it. Ethan stood by the kitchen counter, not near either of us. Chloe hovered by the door like somebody at a funeral who wasn't sure whether she belonged in the front row. Then my mother came in, breathless, purse still over her shoulder, and Lily, 2 minutes after that, moving quietly to stand near me without touching me. The apartment looked painfully ordinary. The stack of shower gifts still by the wall, the white serving platter in its box, ribbon curling on the floor near the baseboard where I hadn't vacuumed yet, my whole ruined life sitting in bridal tissue paper. I looked at Chloe and said, "Tell me the truth." She covered her mouth with one hand and started shaking her head before I had even asked a full question. "Please don't do this like this," my mother said immediately. I turned to her. "Like what?" "In my own apartment. Ava, let's just breathe." "No," I said. "You can breathe. I've been breathing. I'm done." Then I looked at Ethan. "How long?" He dragged a hand over his face. It wasn't ongoing like you're thinking." Chloe made a sound, then half sob, half protest. "Ethan," I held up my hand. "No, both of you need to hear what it sounds like when you lie next to each other." Nobody spoke, so I did it for them. "You were together before the shower," I said. "You were together while I was opening gifts for a marriage you had already dirtied. You stood there and watched me thank people for glass bowls and recipe cards and towels for a home that wasn't even honest." Chloe broke first. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this," she said, crying openly now. "You don't understand." I looked at her so hard she stopped. "No," I said quietly. "You don't get to tell me I don't understand my own humiliation." My mother whispered, "Ava." I kept going. "You cried because you couldn't stand watching me be celebrated for a life you thought should have been yours. That's why you cried, Chloe. Not because you love me that much, because you couldn't handle seeing it in public." Her face changed. That was the moment I knew I was right, not just about the affair, but about the tears. Something bitter and naked flashed through her before the crying swallowed it again. "It wasn't about taking anything from you," she said. It was such a weak lie that even Ethan looked down. Lily spoke then for the first time, her voice calm and flat. "Then what exactly was it about?" Chloe looked at her like she hated being forced into plain language. Ethan stepped in, desperate now. "I messed up. Okay, I messed up. It happened a few times. It was stupid and I was going to end it. A few times. There are phrases people use when they want sin to sound administrative." I stared at him. "You let my sister want you, and you let me trust you, and you stood in the middle like that made you a man." He flinched. "That's what this is," I said. "You liked being admired by one woman and safe with the other, and you thought I would never see clearly enough to make you pay for it." My mother was crying now too, but in that contained way of hers that always seemed more concerned with the room than the wound. "We need to handle this carefully," she said. "There's a marriage here. There's family here. I turned to her so fast she stopped speaking. That is exactly the problem, I said. You are still trying to handle this like the ugliest part is that other people might find out. She looked slapped. From the doorway, Aunt Rachel's voice said, "She's right." I hadn't even heard her come in. She stepped inside, set down her keys, and looked around the room with the exhausted sadness of someone who had hoped to be wrong. The ugliest part, she said, is what they were willing to let her live inside before she knew. Nobody argued with her. I stood up then. My knees felt weak, but my voice didn't. "The church wedding is over," I said. "I'm not standing in front of a room full of people and pretending this marriage exists." Ethan went pale. "Ava, don't do this tonight." I almost smiled at that. "Don't do this tonight," as if the timing of my response was the violence. "I'm doing it now because you did it then," I said. "You already had your secret. You don't get my silence too." Chloe took one step toward me, crying harder. "Please, I'm still your sister." And there it was. The family word brought out like a shield after the damage was done. I shook my head. "You were my sister when you watched me open gifts for my future. You were my sister when you let me hug you after that toast. You don't get to become my sister again just because you're scared now." She stopped moving. Ethan tried one last time. "Can we fix this?" "No," I said. It was the easiest word I had said all night. After that, things became practical in the way terrible things do. Ethan packed a bag because I told him to. My mother sat at the table crying into a napkin she had taken from my kitchen. Chloe left without another word after Aunt Rachel told her very softly that tears were not the same thing as remorse. Lily stayed. Much later, after the apartment had gone quiet and the air finally felt like mine again, I sat on the floor by the stack of shower gifts. The room looked almost exactly the same as it had a few hours earlier, which felt obscene. I picked up my mother's recipe card from the top of the pile. Chicken and rice casserole, the one she made when one of us was sick. Her handwriting curled across the index card in blue ink, a little slanted, familiar enough to hurt. For a minute, I just held it. This morning, it had looked like the beginning of something, a small domestic blessing, proof of a home I thought I was building. Now it was just a card in my hand, and somehow that steadied me, because the lie was gone, but the world had not disappeared with it. The room was still here. The lamp in the corner still cast that soft yellow light. Lily was in my kitchen making tea I probably wouldn't drink. My chest hurt so badly it felt split open, but underneath the pain something else had returned. Myself. I ran my thumb over my mother's handwriting one more time, then set the card beside me instead of back in the gift pile. The marriage had been dirtier than I knew. My sister had been smaller than I wanted to believe. My family had tried even now to make comfort out of containment, but the night was honest at last. And sitting there on the floor in the wreckage of ribbon and tissue paper, with the apartment quiet around me and the future suddenly blank, I understood one thing with a clarity that felt almost warm. Losing the fantasy was not the same as losing my life.